Number 11, Circle of Life in Jesus' Name, Part 3, Chapter 16. It's November 2nd at 12 a.m. Saturday morning, Stewart home, Pine Forest, Georgia. Milena peeked in at her little sister, Erilyn. She was sound asleep. Milena had to sing to her, tell her stories about their mom and the new babies, explain to her that they are fine and will be coming home soon, and pray with her more than once. Finally, the adrenaline wore off and Erilyn was sleeping peacefully. Lena then headed downstairs. 14-year-old Charlie was sitting on the sofa in the den. His eyes closed, he appeared to be sleeping. Matthew had curled up on his side on the same sofa and was also asleep. Lena blew out a soft breath and went into the kitchen to straighten up. It'd been a long, hard day. She was drained, both physically and emotionally, and what she wanted, what she craved more than anything in the world at this moment, was Jake's arms around her, or even just to hear his voice. The calls had been few and far between. She understood, but at this moment she felt like she might die without him. Realizing she was standing at the kitchen sink with the water running, she sniffed and turned the water off. She glanced up at the window above the kitchen table and gasped. She stumbled backward, her heart and mind scrambling in her panic. Whoever it was took off. She grabbed her phone off the counter, her hand shaking. Her fingers moved to the J and then hit call. Hello, Lena, you okay? Master Apple, there was someone. He put his phone on speaker as he started pulling on his jeans and shoes. Okay, hon, slow down. Tell me what's going on. She drew a breath. There was someone outside, looking in the kitchen window. He checked his weapon and tucked it in his jeans. I'm on my way. Lena, where's your gun? It's up in my room. Go get it and put it on your hip. Is Charlie asleep? Yes, sir. He's asleep in the den with Matt. And Erilyn? She's asleep in her room. Okay, go awake Charlie and tell him to get his rifle and stay in Erilyn's room with Matt. Tell him he's last defense, like we've talked about. Do that first and then get your own gun on your hip. Are the doors locked? Yes, sir, she said with a sob. I'm almost there. Stay calm. It's going to be all right, sweetie. I have a key. Don't shoot me. Stay on the phone with me, and I'll tell you when I'm coming in. She sniffed. Yes, sir. She did exactly what he said. She woke Charlie, who'd immediately jumped into action like he'd rehearsed it a million times. In only seconds, he and Matt were in Erilyn's room protecting their little sister. Lena walked around downstairs, making sure that what she said was true. The doors were locked. She turned off all the lights and went to the kitchen window to peer out, but didn't see anything. She felt relief when she heard the motor of an approaching vehicle. Lena, are you still there? Yes, sir. It's me coming in the front door. She went into the front hall and watched the front door open. Her mind eased when she saw her father-in-law smile at her as he came inside. She ran to him and he hugged her hard, sticking his gun back in his waistband and taking hers from her. Okay, sweetie, he said gently. I'm here. It's okay. He raised his head. Charlie, he yelled. I'm here. It's okay. You can come down now. Rifle up. Charlie and Matt both came down the stairs, Charlie with his rifle pointed toward the ceiling. And rifle down, John said quietly. He smiled. Good job, boys. So, Uncle John, was this a drill or for real? Charlie asked. It was real. Your sister saw someone looking in the window. Hand me the rifle. He unchambered the rifle, reloaded the bullet, and put it on safety. You kids have a seat in the den while I make a quick call, and then we'll talk. Lena, can you describe what you saw? She sighed. I saw a white face, a man. He was looking in the window and looking right at me. He had on a hat, maybe a Braves hat, dark shirt or coat maybe. As soon as our eyes met, he ran away. John nodded and walked into the kitchen to place his call. He came back a few minutes later and stood looking down at three of the Stewart kids. 3 of 6. Well, one was an apple. So, he began. It's been quite a day, hasn't it? Charlie nodded. What I thought would be a regular day at school and going to a football game tonight turned out a lot different. Well, Charlie, I know I've already said it, but you did a great job helping to bring those babies into the world today. Charlie nodded. I admit, I was scared. We all were, Lena said. John looked down at 12-year-old Matt. How you feeling, kiddo? Matt shrugged. You know, Matt, you did great too. I didn't do anything. John smiled. Is that what you think? Listen, 'cause I know. Your dad and Lena were so worried about your mom, and they were watching Charlie, and all of them were concentrating on your mom, and they just knew, without even asking you, they just knew that you would take care of Erilyn. It was no surprise to them that when they turned around after the babies had been born, that you were right there, holding Erilyn's hand. That's how strong and dependable you were. You didn't complain that you should be the one to crawl through that window and get all the glory. You just did what you knew had to be done. Well, that's no big deal. Well, if Erilyn had wandered out to the street or gotten behind one of those emergency vehicles and been hurt or run over, then the day would still have ended in tragedy. But you kept that from happening, and I think, and I know your mom and dad think, that that is a very big deal. I do too, Charlie said. Me too, Lena said. Matt shrugged, but his lips turned up slightly. You know how in football the quarterback or the receivers usually get all the glory, right? But if the line didn't block, if they didn't do their job in the trenches, then the QB couldn't do what he does. It's a team effort, and that's what today has been all about. Your family worked together like a team, earlier today and just now, and I'm very proud of you all. Thanks, Uncle John, Charlie said. He nodded. Now, Charlie, you and Matt, come give me a hug and go on up to bed. I want to have a talk with your sister. The boys immediately obeyed. John sighed and looked at Lena. You okay? She nodded. Who do you think would be all the way out here looking in our window? Well, I'm not sure. One of Brett's loyal followers, maybe? Some homeless vagrant? Who knows? Lena nodded but kept silent. You miss him, John said softly. Her eyes filled immediately and she nodded. I feel like I'm going to die without him. Well, the longing is powerful. That's what Jody once told me. The longing and the yearning makes you feel like life is miserable. I feel it too because Jake is such a light. His presence is so powerful that when he goes away, it leaves only darkness. Yeah, that's how I feel, like I'm living in darkness. And how selfish is that of me right now when I should be so happy that Mom and the babies are alive and well, and I am happy that they are alive and well. But without Jake, it's like I'm living in darkness. I'm so sad. I can concentrate on the present moment for a time, but then the sadness comes creeping in. I want so badly to share what happened today with him. I need for him to call and talk for longer than 5 minutes. I thought we'd be able to talk more. He's only called me a few times. Do you think he's okay? John nodded. I do. When I pray about him, my anxiety melts away. I know he's okay, just busy, or maybe out in the field. He can only call from their base of operations. If they're out on a mission, it could be a while. And once they get back, he may not be able to get to comms before he has to leave again. Lena wiped at her tears. This is so hard. Much harder than I thought it would be. What did you tell Jake before he left? What did you tell him you would do while he was gone? She shrugged. I don't really remember. I mean, I told him I'd wait for him to come back to me. I told him I'd be strong and take care of business while he was gone. I told him I'd keep the home fires burning. Ah, there it is. That's what I wanted to hear. You wanted to hear about home fires? He smiled. Yes. Remember I said Jake is a light, and when he leaves it seems so dark? Well, those home fires, that's your light, Lena. It's warm and bright and comforting. You have to shine your light brighter when he's gone to compensate for the darkness. And how do I shine my light? Well, in Matthew chapter 14, it says to let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify God. Not an exact quote, but close enough. So that means you do good things for others and be a light, and you don't wallow in sadness and darkness and grieve. If you do this, you'll forget the longing. Lena sighed. I've been trying to do exactly what you're saying. I've been taking care of Mom and helping Aunt Lizzie and helping Rose at the center. It helps for a little while, mostly because it keeps me focused on something other than Jake. But the moment I have a minute alone, my heart feels like it's going to break. Well, let me ask you, Bugs, and don't be insulted by this question, But when you're doing all those things, are you doing them with the inner thoughts of really accomplishing something good? Or are you just being long-suffering? She sighed. I'm not quite sure what you mean. Well, in Proverbs it says, a glad heart maketh a cheerful countenance, but by sorrow of heart the spirit is broken. And right now, I'd say your spirit is broken. It also says in 2 Corinthians, each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. So I'm wondering what's in your heart as you do these things. I don't think you're helping your mom reluctantly. I'm not saying that. But maybe your heart isn't all the way into all of those things you're doing because you've reserved this little piece of your heart for the suffering over Jake's absence. Lena sat quietly thinking about what he said. So, what you're saying is, I'm not putting my whole self into it, wholeheartedly with a cheerful and willing spirit. Maybe. It's not for me to judge, but clearly, even with all the things you're doing, you're still broken and sad and yearning. How can a person who feels that way be a light to anyone? Ask God to help you make your light shine so that you can truly serve those around you, so that you can bring them light, so that no one has to worry about Lanebug because she's filled with the light of God. She nodded. I, I want to do that. I don't want to feel this way anymore. He smiled. But you can't want to do that because you don't want to feel a certain way. You have to want to do that because you truly want to help others. It's such a minor adjustment in thinking, but it's important. She nodded. So, when I called you to come and help me, did it feel like a burden to you to have to get out of bed and get dressed and come over here? He chuckled. When Jody and I prayed together before we went to bed, we asked, as usual, to know and recognize how we can help you. Me specifically or everyone? Well, everyone, yes, but yes, you specifically. Why me specifically? Because you're my son's wife. Because he asked us to take care of you and to look after you and to help you in any way we could. And we're grateful for the opportunity to do what he asked of us while he serves and puts his life on the line to help others. Jody and I know you're suffering. We know you miss him. We know that because we miss him. But there are things to be grateful for. First, that you two are together, a married couple, husband and wife. He could be deployed again and you and him remained nothing more than neighbors. I'm grateful that once you helped Jake to realize that you were supposed to be together, he worked fast and made it happen. So that's a good thing. Lena sighed. When he knew, and he didn't want to wait. He took immediate action. I can see that he learned that from you and Aunt Jody. Y'all are such good people. We try to do God's work, and that's all glory to him. And we're proud of Jake because he has embraced the same goal, to serve God, which for you means that he'll be the best husband. Lena nodded. He is such a good guy, and I love him so much. I know you do. I also know that he loves you, and you, Lena, are the most important person in his life. You're the only one that he knows emotionally and spiritually and physically. He knows you above everyone else. The fact that he hasn't been able to call you much is probably wearing very heavily on him because he knows that you might be struggling with that. You're right, it probably is, and I don't want him to worry about me when he needs to concentrate on what he's doing. She sighed. So that means I'll do better. I'll work to serve God and be a light to others, and that will make me the best wife for him. John nodded. Exactly. And like I said, Bugs, it's such a minor tweaking of why you're doing what you're doing. Lena smiled, a cheerful heart willingly looking for ways to be a light to others. Her eyes opened wide and she jumped up. I just saw a light flash on the wall behind you. There's someone in the backyard. He nodded. I asked Keegan to send over a couple of agents to look around, see what they can find. She patted her chest as if to calm her heart. Oh, okay. Well, that's good. I doubt they'll find anything, but you never know. Lena, you have to be tired. Why don't you go on up and try to get some sleep? But I'm going to stay right here tonight. You can sleep without worry. Please try. You need to rest. Tomorrow is going to be another long day. She nodded. Thanks, Uncle John. I'll go up and try. I'll see you in the morning, and I'll let you know if they find anything. Lena moved forward and hugged him. He wrapped his arms around her and patted her back. All is well, he said softly. New scene. It is November 2nd, 7 a.m., Saturday morning, South Keno Estate, Crystal Cove, California. Young Eric came up from the beach, took a quick shower, and headed straight to Jordan's room. She was not sleeping peacefully. She whimpered a few times, tossing her head. She lay down on the bed beside her, rolled toward her, and watched her. He lay down on the bed beside her, rolled toward her, and watched her. When she whimpered again, he put his hand on the side of her face. Shh, baby. Everything's okay. I got you. Her eyes blinked open, and he smiled down at her. Good morning, 23. She offered a slight smile. Morning, 3. She stretched and yawned. What time is it? It's about 7:20 right now. Are you going in to train? Not yet. You are going to get up and shower and dress, and we're going to go watch Taylor in the homecoming parade, and then we're going to go over to Granddad's house for lunch and a counseling session, and he and I and Dad and some of the agents are going to spar on the beach, and you get to cheer me on. Well, what if I said I don't want to go to the parade, and I don't want to go over to Grandmaster Keno's house, and I don't really want to do anything? He frowned. I'd say, too bad. I'm not going to let you sink down into some deep, dark depression. Now get your butt up and get in the shower, or I'll drag you in there and wash you myself. I can't take a shower with my cast on. Yes, you can. Mom got you a cast cover. It's in the bathroom. She said if you need help, let her know and she'll help you. Jordan sighed. He smiled. You don't want to test me about this. Get up. I'm going to go down and make us a smoothie, and you need to hurry because I don't want to miss my sister in this parade. She's never been recognized at school that much. She's actually had a hard time making friends, and this year she's beginning to come into her own, and I don't want to miss her, and she would be devastated if you weren't there for her. Well, where is everyone? Have they left already? Gabe took Taylor to the parade. Alec and Desi followed them over. Mom is waiting to see if you need any help, and if I give her a thumbs up, she and Dad are going to go find a place along the parade route. Jordan sighed and frowned, and apparently didn't move fast enough for his liking. He rose up and jerked the covers off the bed. She gasped, but he scooped her up and carried her into the bathroom and sat her on the countertop and picked up the box that held the cast cover and read the directions. He eyed her. Are you wearing anything underneath that nightshirt? That is none of your business. I'm making it my business. Tell me now, or I'll find out on my own. What is wrong with you? Not a thing. He slid his hand to her thigh and started to go up under the shirt. Stop! I'm not wearing anything. He nodded. Good. He bent down in front of her and got the cast covered. There, that should work. He set her down on the floor. Now, all you have to do is pull the nightshirt over your head and take a shower. You need one. And you'll feel a lot better. Stand right there, and I'll go get your crutches. He quickly retrieved the crutches from the side of the bed and brought them to her. I'm going to go make our breakfast. I'll be back up here to pray with you in about 20 minutes, so you better work fast. She glared at him. He laughed. You need help getting your shirt off? I do not. Get out of here. He nodded. I'm going. He quickly left the bathroom and closed the door behind him. 30 minutes later, he came back into her room without knocking. She was wearing a pair of the special pants his mom had purchased for her, made especially for wearing with a cast. This one appeared to be like jeans, but was of a stretchy material and zipped down the side from knee to ankle. She had on a white shirt with a short blue jean jacket and was sitting on the bed, tying her one athletic shoe. Her hair was still wet. She didn't even look up at him. He'd made her mad, and he thought that was funny and cute and a lot better to be mad than sad. He sat down on the bed beside her. Good job, Jordan. You made it, though I did give you a little extra time. Bite me, was her only response. Okay. He pushed her back on the bed, rolled over on top of her, and bit down on the tender flesh just under her jaw. He raised his head. You smell really good. He nuzzled her neck, kissed her softly there, and moved to her mouth. He gave 3 quick, soft kisses before he laid one on her. She capitulated and moaned. Reluctantly ending the kiss, he lifted his head and sighed. "One day, baby, one day." "One day what?" she asked. He smiled. "You know." He rose. "Come on, I'll help you make the bed." They worked together, and then he patted the bed. "Sit down here." She did as ordered, and he sat beside her and took her hands in his and began to pray. His prayer was spoken softly and was so filled with his love and concern for her as he spoke to God and asked blessings on her that she couldn't stay mad at him any longer. What was she mad at, anyway? Nothing, really. He made her get up and get going. What was she, some petulant child? He was helping her to get back on track, and suddenly she was grateful. He ended the prayer. "Thank you, Eric," she said softly. He smiled at her, a twinkle in his eye. "It was my pleasure. Come on, let's go." New scene. Gabe went live on his social media for the parade. It wasn't very long, not in distance and not in participants. It went less than a couple of miles from the staging area at a parking lot of a local grocery store, down the street, making one turn onto the street where the school was and ending in the parking lot of the school. The participants consisted of the marching band, the cheerleaders, the drill team, and dance team, a small float for the football players to ride on, and a bunch of fancy cars that carried school officials, town officials, important alumni, and a couple of pro football players who'd gone to school at Brookside. There was also the school tiger mascot and a bunch of students dressed all crazy running around and tossing out candy at the crowd. The main float, however, was the float carrying the homecoming court, with Taylor as queen in the place of honor. Taylor was stunning in her dress, the same formal she'd worn the night before. At the dance tonight, she would wear a shorter dress, though still considered formal. Gabe smiled as he thought about his girl. When one of the girls made a snide comment about Taylor intending to wear the same dress in the parade as she wore on the field last night, Taylor seemed completely unaffected and only shrugged. "Isn't it silly," she'd said, "that we think we can't wear the same dress twice? Another dress would cost a lot of money that would be much better used donated to Gabe's foundation," which is exactly what my mom did. Gabe took a moment to explain that conversation on his live video and issued an invitation to anyone else who wanted to do the same. Or how cool would it be if they could think of another thing that they could do without and send the proceeds to any good cause? If you have any ideas, comment below and we'll talk about some of your ideas and make it a challenge. He grinned as the comment section blew up. Skimming down, he read aloud some of the ideas pouring in. Sweet Candy says to give up the 15th pair of boots you were about to buy. Donnie, 25, says to use your old bat or make your glove last another year by oiling it and taking care of it. Maximum 11 says to tell people to donate in your name for Christmas or to just give whatever cash you get for Christmas. And Seeking Jesus says to fast for a day and donate the money you would have spent on food. But don't be all like, "I'm fasting," patting yourself on the back. He smiled. These are all great ideas, and you guys rock. Young Eric and Jordan cheered for Taylor as she passed, and she smiled and waved to them. Eric Sr. and Shelley brought the little ones who were having lots of fun, trying to pick up candy and waving at everyone. Melody was not working today, but Logan invited her to come see the parade with him, and she'd agreed. Jordan was interested in seeing how Melody acted around Logan because of how Jordan felt sorry for Logan when that Angie girl had so obviously gone out with him only because he was a member of the Keno family. Jordan hadn't had a chance to get to know Melody yet, but she seemed sweet. She was definitely pretty. Jordan watched her as Logan leaned down and said something to her. Melody laughed and pointed at someone in the parade, and then Logan laughed. "What you looking at, 2-3?" young Eric asked. She smiled up at Eric. "Melody and Logan, they make a cute couple, don't you think?" He nodded. "Well, let's not rush him. They would make a good couple, but they're not a couple yet. It would be nice if Logan found a girl to date." Jordan nodded. "And what about JoJo?" "What about him?" "Well, does he date much?" "Nope. He says he has enough to concentrate on with football and his classes." "Has he ever had a girlfriend?" "A few. He had a girlfriend in middle school. They were pretty close, but she moved away, maybe a few others. And then there was a girl when he was a sophomore in high school. But after a year together, he overheard her talking about trying to get him to get her pregnant so that she would always be related to our family. Seriously? How sick is that? Right? And then the only other girl who's ever been interested in is now married to Jake Apple. Lena? Young Eric nodded. We call them the East Coast portion of our family. The Stewarts, Apples, Tanners, Nashes. They come to visit us in Cali at least once a year, and we've been to visit them in Georgia or in Tennessee at least once a year. Jojo thought Lena was hot. Yeah, because she is. Young Eric laughed. Yep. And she even kissed him a few times, but that was just to make Jake take notice of her. Did it work? Well, not really. I mean, not at the time. Jake was going into the military, and that's all he was focused on. But apparently, when he came back from his first deployment, Lena finally got his attention, and within just a few months, they got married. So, poor Jojo, he got used a couple of times. Well, I guess, though I wouldn't think of what Lena did as using him because he was using her too. I mean, he was trying real hard to get those kisses. But yeah, now he's pretty jaded on girls, though meeting you has given him hope that maybe one day he'll find a genuine, sweet, gorgeous girl too one day. Jordan giggled. Yeah, and maybe his girl won't have so much baggage. Young Eric shook his head. Your baggage, as you call it, is your past, and it doesn't bother me at all to help you carry it. Your past is what makes you who you are, and I love who you are. You're the best, Jordan, the best. And I'm grateful for you every minute of every day. She grinned. Those are mighty mushy words, 3. He nodded. And I'm not a bit ashamed of that. He turned to her, took her face in his hands, and kissed her soundly. And well, now they're kissing, Gabe said. But let's see if they'll look up and give us a statement. Young Eric, Jordan, do you have anything to say about the challenge coming up 1 week from today? Eric and Jordan parted slowly and turned toward Gabe. You know you have lousy timing, young Eric said, making Gabe chuckle. Sorry, man, but I'm about to sign off and my viewers wanted to hear from you, Gabe explained. Well, I'm looking forward to the challenge. We'll just see if I have what it takes to add to the Kino legacy. Are you nervous at all? Gabe asked. No. Are you? Gabe smiled. Nope. I'm ready, like you say, to see what I got. Gabe turned his phone toward Jordan. What about you, Jordan? Are you nervous for young Eric? She smiled. Honestly? Always. She nodded. Well, yeah. I've been privileged to be able to watch several training sessions, and they are brutal. And Eric has been pounded on by some very lethal guys, so it makes me nervous about what's to come. Young Eric grinned at her words. They were perfect. It made her sound as if she didn't think he'd win. That would go viral, and his opponents would get comfortable, maybe even complacent. He liked it, and he knew his grandfather would also like it. Gabe frowned as his phone was buzzing, and he lifted it and read a few of the comments that were blowing up. Okay, so, Jordan, a bunch of my viewers are saying that they heard about the serial rapist who tried to get you and that they prayed for your speedy recovery and they hope you're doing better. Jordan smiled sweetly. Oh, thank you all very much. It was scary, and I'm still recovering, and I'm not sure if my foot will be healed enough to be able to continue to play softball for UCLA, so your continued prayers will always be appreciated. Gabe ended the interview and went on to speak to Logan and ask him about his gig tonight, and then gave the followers a treat and let them see the little Kinos, who all smiled and waved at the camera. And finally he got Grandmaster Kino, Miss Shelley, Ricky, and Bree to wave at the camera and signed off. Jordan sighed and smiled up at young Eric. Thanks for making me get up and come this morning. You're welcome. Thanks for coming. I'm hungry. Are you ready for some lunch and good times at my grandparents' house? She nodded. Yes. Yes, I am. New scene. It's November 2nd, Saturday night. The Caffeine Factor Coffee House, UCLA campus. Melody told Logan she'd meet him at the coffee house. She hadn't known exactly how long it would take her to get there, and she didn't want to be late, so she ended up arriving early. She hoped that didn't make her seem too eager. Not that she was trying to impress the very cute guy, but he was definitely interesting, and she was flattered that he seemed to be interested in her. She knew he was her employer's grandson, and she wanted everything to be on the up and up, so she told Miss Shelley that Logan had asked her to come watch him. The sweet lady had been very pleased. She said that Logan was a fine young man and very talented, and that Melody was in for a treat. Melody had a feeling that Miss Shelley's definition of a fine young man and Melody's definition of a fine young man was a little different. Either way, Logan was definitely fine. Currently, he was speaking with the manager of the coffee house. He finished his conversation and left the place and came back in a few minutes later carrying a large amplifier. At least that's what she thought it was. She set it down off to the side of the seating area. No, he set it down off to the side of the seating area and came to her with a smile. "Hey, Melody, you're here early." She nodded. "I wasn't sure how long it would take me to get here, and I hate being late for anything, so here I am," she said with a shrug. He smiled. She was so adorable. She was dressed casually in jeans and a soft, goldish brown sweater with white athletic shoes. Her hair was down and straight and came just past her shoulders. He hadn't decided yet if it was dark blonde or light brown, or maybe brown with gold highlights. Whatever it was clean and shiny and beautiful. Her beautiful face was, well, beautiful. Her hazel eyes shining, her lips soft and pink. He cleared his throat. "Well," he said, "I'm really glad you came. I hope you like it." She nodded. "I'm sure I will." "Okay, well, I have to finish setting up and then warm up. Do you need some help?" He frowned and then nodded. "Sure, you can save me a trip and carry the guitar in for me." She followed him to his car. He reached in the back and pulled out the guitar case and handed it to her, then reached in again and pulled out a mic stand and a cardboard box. "Are you nervous?" she asked him as they headed back in. He shook his head. "I don't usually get too nervous. I just love to sing, and I'm excited about every opportunity." She smiled. Back inside, she watched him set up. He was all business, setting up his area, pulling electrical cords and mics out of the box, plugging things in, adjusting the mic stand. He tested the mic. He tested the guitar. He set it on a stand. He smiled at Melody and came to see her again. "So, can I get you anything? Coffee, a drink, a sandwich, a donut?" I haven't eaten, so a sandwich and maybe a juice." He nodded. "Oh, they have great chicken salad sandwich." "Sounds good." "And apple, cranberry, mango, or orange?" "I'll try mango." "Great, be right back." She watched him as he ordered her food. He was really cute. He had brown hair and blue eyes. His hair was trimmed neatly on the sides, but longish on top and brushed back away from his face, though some of it fell forward onto his forehead. He had dark lashes, a perfect straight nose, beautiful lips, and gorgeous smile, and he looked really good in the jeans he was wearing, paired with a blue and white striped knit shirt that showed off his physique. He looked every bit as fit as all of the Kino family. His chest looked strong, his biceps ripped. His thighs and backside were muscular. Giving her head a slight shake, she schooled her thoughts. He brought her sandwich and juice on a tray and set it on the table in front of her. "Thank you. It's my pleasure. Well, I need to warm up." She nodded. "I'm looking forward to it." He smiled and went to pick up his guitar and take a seat on the stool next to his amp. He strummed a few times, then started playing a song she recognized, "Pretty Woman." He looked right at her and winked, and she got a feeling he was flirting with her. People began filing into the shop as he warmed up. Young Eric and Jordan came in too. Jordan came to sit at the seat saved for her, while young Eric ordered 2 bottles of water and 2 cheese and nut protein boxes. Jordan smiled at Melody as she approached. Melody jumped up. "Can I help you get seated?" Jordan nodded. "Yes, and thank you." Melody pulled out the chair for her and helped her ease down onto it. "Are you feeling any better?" Melody asked. Jordan nodded. "A little. I'm still in a lot of pain most of the time, but 3 is taking good care of me." Melody smiled. "Nate told me that you call Eric 3. It's very cute." Jordan smiled. "Yes, he is." Melody giggled. "And so is Logan," Jordan said. Melody looked over at him. He was now playing Malaguena and it was pretty darn impressive. She nodded. Totally, she said softly. So, are you interested? Jordan asked. Melody smiled. Wow, you don't mess around, do you? Jordan giggled. Sorry. It's okay. I mean, he's really cute. He seems really nice. He's very much a gentleman, like in an old-fashioned kind of way, and I like that. Jordan nodded. The Keno men are all like that. They are very protective of their women. The young guys are good to their mothers and sisters. The older guys are so good to their wives. It didn't take long for me to realize that this family is very special and very different than the rest of the world. Melody nodded. They seem to be. When the Kenos hired me to help with the children, I was immediately blown away by the way they do things. Mr. Keno is so kind to Miss Shelley, and he teaches the children to be respectful to her. He will not allow them 1 second to give Miss Shelley a hard time. It's pretty cool, but he doesn't yell at them. He speaks so softly and calmly. I agree with you. They are special people, and I love coming to work. Jordan smiled. Well, that's always a plus, instead of having a job you dread going to, right? Melody nodded and smiled at young Eric as he approached. Hello, Melody. It's nice to see you again. You too, Eric. Young Eric. He smiled. You can just call me Eric when my grandfather's not around. He unloaded the tray and went to put the tray away. They chatted and ate, and a few minutes later, young Eric rose and welcomed Alec and Desi to the table with them. He asked them if he could get them anything and then went to place the order, and 5 minutes later he was graciously serving the young couple. Finally, Logan finished warming up and glanced at his phone and then spoke into his mic. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of The Caffeine Factor. Sit back, relax, and enjoy some Saturday night music. Let's begin with a request made by my cousin who's here tonight. Eric and Jordan, this is for you. Jordan smiled as Logan sang I'm Yours, a song by Jason Mraz. As Logan's beautiful voice rang out clear over the crowd, they all quieted. Melody looked around. They were mesmerized, and so was she. She had no idea he was this good. She sighed. She could listen to him sing all night. He may just be singing at a little coffee house, but he was so good. She had a feeling that one day he'd be handed one of those golden awards in the shape of an old phonograph. New scene. It's November 3rd, Sunday afternoon, Copeland home, Hillcrest, California. Ricky Keno drove up to Destiny Copeland's family home. He pulled into the drive of a nice upper-middle-class home located in an equally nice subdivision called The Colony at Hillcrest. The homes were large, well-maintained, nicely landscaped, and had expensive cars sitting in driveways outside of double garages. Most of the houses were a light tan-colored brick, but some were stone siding. The yards were probably a good quarter acre. People who lived in the subdivision definitely made a good living. Ricky had just spoken at Lake Forest Baptist, where the Copelands attended church every Sunday. His topic had been about forgiveness and what would Jesus do, and the importance of family and priorities. After the meeting, he'd been profusely thanked and his hand shaken and his picture taken. And then he finally moved forward to speak to Dustin Copeland and his wife, Marvinia Copeland. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Keno, Dustin said as he offered his hand. I had no idea that you would be offering the sermon here today. Ricky nodded. It's nice to meet you, too. He turned and offered his hand to Marvinia. And you, too, Mrs. Copeland. Well, I hadn't intended to speak here today, but last year I promised your pastor that I would come to your church and speak, and when I made the appointment with you and your wife, I gave the pastor a call and told him I'd be in the area. Well, that was a fine sermon, Mr. Keno, Marvinia said. Thank you. All glory to God. Absolutely, Dustin said. Well, Marvinia and I are heading to the house. Would you like to follow us? Ricky glanced at his watch. I need to speak with Pastor Frank for a few minutes, but I'll be on my way to you shortly. Thank you again for taking the time to meet with me. It's our pleasure, Marvinia said sweetly. Ricky watched them leave and then turned to find the pastor. He decided to confide in the pastor what his goal was for the Copelands, which currently was to help heal the family and reunite Destiny Copeland with her family. Before he left the head pastor, they'd prayed together over the situation. Ricky hoped he'd be given the right words to say and that his meeting with the family wouldn't make things worse. He wasn't afraid of confrontation. He was only afraid of misjudging or becoming angry. Now Ricky stepped out into the driveway in front of the Copeland home. He whispered a soft prayer. He headed to the door and rang the doorbell. In only a few seconds, Marvinia Copeland opened one of the large, ornate double doors, each with a beautiful fall wreath hanging on it. "Mr. Keno, please come in." Ricky smiled and stepped inside. "You have a lovely home," he said, knowing that was important to them. "Oh, thank you." He glanced around the foyer at the high ceiling and crystal chandeliers. The area was meticulously decorated. An eye-catching crystal bowl sat on the entryway table, filled with the likeness of fruit, only the fruit was all golden. There were 3 large ceramic candle holders holding 3 white pillar candles, a small plant in a hammered brass container, and on the second shelf of the table sat 2 large seagrass baskets sitting on either side of a large southwestern-style vase holding some dried stems of cotton. Behind this table was a large mirror, and across from this table was a beautiful staircase with a curving, polished wood banister. Just next to one side of the staircase was a wooden bench, upholstered in white, with a small Native American blanket throw folded perfectly and hanging over one end. She led him through the entranceway, past the staircase, and turned left into a large living room, again meticulously decorated. The air smelled of vanilla, he was sure, due to the candles burning on one of the end tables, on the side of a large, expensive-looking, beige-colored sofa with an array of fancy throw pillows. "Please have a seat, Mr. Keno, and I'll tell my husband you're here." "No need. I heard the doorbell," Dustin Copeland said as he entered from the other side of the room. Ricky stood quickly and shook hands. "Mr. Copeland?" Dustin nodded. "Please have a seat." Ricky sat back down. "May I get you something to drink?" Marvinia asked. "Some water would be great," Ricky said casually. "Filtered, spring, or sparkling?" she asked. Ricky smiled. "Sparkling, thank you." "I'll be right back. Oh, honey, would you like anything?" "No, I'm fine." "I was telling your wife you have a lovely home." Dustin smiled. "Thank you. It was Marvinia's dream home." "Oh, how long have you lived here?" 15 years. "May I ask you, Mr. Copeland, what business you're in?" "I'm an accountant." Ricky nodded as Marvinia came back into the room with a crystal glass of sparkling water with a small lemon wedge on the edge of the glass. He rose and accepted the water. "Thank you." She smiled. "My pleasure." He looked into the eyes of each person. "So, I won't beat around the bush. Let me say thank you once more for agreeing to see me. Oh, we don't get calls from a movie star often asking to come to speak to us. Actually, my husband does because of his line of work, but they usually don't want to come to our home. And, of course, Marvinia." Ricky looked over at Dustin, who'd spoken firmly. "Oh, sorry, I tend to go on and on sometimes." "No worries, Mrs. Copeland. I told you on the phone that I have news of your daughter, and I won't keep you waiting any longer. Destiny is doing well right now, but she's had a very hard time." "How did you come to know our daughter?" Dustin asked. "My son, Eric, was helping a homeless man at a store near here." "Oh, yes, I heard the story of how he was giving food to a homeless man, and that's when he was kidnapped." Eric nodded. Ricky nodded. "Correct. He'd promised that man that he would help him get off the streets. And the day after Eric was rescued from the kidnappers, he remembered his promise to that man, and he came down here to meet with him, and I tagged along because, well, my son had just come through a terrible ordeal, and I was feeling a little clingy," he said with a smile. "But the homeless guy wasn't where he usually was, and we searched in the woods at the rear of the store and found a grouping of tents. Your daughter came out of one of those tents." Marvinia's eyes opened wide. "She was homeless?" Ricky glanced up at her and tried to let go of the sudden flash of temper. What did she expect? He sighed. Anger wouldn't help the situation. He nodded. "Yes, she'd apparently been through a very hard time. When she was asked to leave home, she tried to contact some aunts. I'm not sure what side of the family they were on, and they turned her down. She stayed at a couple of her friends' homes for a few weeks, and when Alec learned that she had nowhere to go, he put his plans to go to college on hold, got a job, and found a place for them to live. But it wasn't a very nice area, and his car was vandalized to where it was not drivable. So he started taking the bus to work. And because of the bus not running on schedule, he was late to work a few times, and he lost his job. And they lost the apartment, and they found themselves homeless. So that boy is still with her. Yes, he couldn't leave her alone to fend for herself. He loves her. If he loved her, he wouldn't have done what he did to her. Ricky smiled kindly. Well, they were in love. He didn't do it to her. They did it together. I don't want to hear that, Dustin said sharply. Ricky realized this man was used to being in complete control of everyone and everything around him, but he certainly did not intimidate Ricky, and so he went on. I know it's hard for you to hear, and it's a lot easier to blame the guy. I get that. We're men. Men are ultimately responsible. But these kids made a mistake. They both know they did, and they're both paying for it, and they're both sorry. Oh, I bet they are. Let me ask you this. If we were to see this from your perspective, you said he did it to her. Dustin nodded. Then that would make her a victim, right? Yes. Then why would you throw the victim out of the house? His eyes opened wide. How dare you? How dare I what? State it like it is? Let's just use that scenario for a minute. You say that Alec did something to Destiny. In some cultures in the Middle East, if a girl is raped, they punish the girl, sometimes even kill her. I know that can't seem right to you. No, of course not, Marvinia said quickly. Ricky glanced at her. Obviously, she was used to placating her husband. He went on. So, if we go with your thought that this is all Alec's fault, that he forced or seduced Destiny, took her virginity and got her pregnant, why would you throw her out of the house? He paused. That was a rhetorical question, because I know the answer. It's because you do hold her at least partially responsible. She disobeyed your rules. More importantly, she disobeyed God's rules, and you felt she should be punished. Or was it more like you didn't want to have to deal with the embarrassment of having a teenage daughter who was pregnant? What would it say about you as parents? How could you hold your heads up in the social circle in which you move, especially at church? He stopped, sighed, and looked from husband to wife. Their silence meant he hit the truth. Look, I'm not here to judge you. My only reason for being here is to help you. I truly mean that. Let me have my say on Destiny's behalf, and I'll leave, and you'll never have to hear from me again. But I hope that's not how this will end, because I do truly want to help heal this situation, if not for your sake, then for Destiny's sake. Say what you have to say, Dustin ordered. Ricky picked up his glass and took a few swallows of water and set it down. That day, when we came upon your sweet daughter, her condition was not good. She was very thin, obviously pregnant, very dirty, smelly, hungry, dark circles under her eyes. I didn't even know until later, after my wife got her cleaned up, that her hair was blonde. She was truly pitiful. Anyone with half a heart would have stopped to help her. She was so sad and afraid. So we took her and Alec home with us and got them cleaned up and got them help. You know, Alec is a sharp young man. He was senior class president. He had close to the highest GPA in the school. He had a full ride to Stanford based purely on academics. That is rare. His only mistake was falling in love with your daughter, and he does love her deeply. So much that he threw away what he'd achieved to try to take care of her. Though having babies is not optimal, and he didn't quite know how to go about it. We've had many counseling sessions, Alec, Destiny, my wife, and I. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that your daughter is highly intelligent, articulate, and of course, beautiful. But I might need to tell you that she loves you very much, and she very much wants to be in your life and wants you to be part of her life. All of you. She says she has an older sister? Yes, Charity. She's actually here today. She's upstairs in her room giving us some privacy, Marvinia stated. Ricky nodded. The very first counseling session I had with these kids, I asked Destiny if she had 3 wishes, what would she wish for? No matter how hard it would seem to obtain, no matter the price, just say it. I was surprised by her answer. The first thing she wished for was to have her family back. that somehow you would forgive her and be part of her and her child's life. He stopped and looked at them. Dustin sat with his lips pressed tightly together. Marvinia had tears in her eyes. The second thing she wished for is that Alec and his mother would also reconcile and be a part of their lives. A very loving and unselfish wish to make. And her final wish was to finish high school. He paused and took a drink. Now, just to keep you in the loop, we have contacted people who are specialists in helping in these types of situations, and we have also called in a few favors. And as it turns out, Alec's scholarship has been reinstated, but he won't start school until next fall term, so he's behind a year. Not too bad. He also has been given an apprenticeship at the law firm of Lee and Adams, which is the second-ranked law firm in the state, and it only ranks slightly lower than the top ranked in the state and in the nation because there are certain dishonest deals and clients that they refuse to take. He and Destiny will be living in a small but very nice home close to Stanford starting next summer. Until then, they will be living in a home just south of LA. Alec will be working at Lee and Adams up until he leaves for school. He has a bright future ahead of him. He's smart, hardworking, honest, and he loves your daughter. Now, I've been told, Mr. Copeland, that you were very angry with her, and it was you who ordered her out of your home, out of the only home she's ever known, and I understand you being angry. She messed up all your plans. However, there is a time when we must forgive. You might be angry because she embarrassed you as a Christian, yet even more so, you're embarrassing yourself. Dustin Copeland jumped to his feet, his face red with anger. Ricky shrugged slightly, but remained calm and stayed seated. A Christian realizes that we are all human. A Christian doesn't judge others. We don't look the other way either. We confront evil. And we don't tolerate evil, but we don't condemn. That's not our role. Our role is to forgive and have compassion and to love those who use us or persecute us. To love each other as Jesus loved us, unconditionally. I get that you're a proud man. I also get that you like to be in control. Still, the only thing you can be in control of, really, is your own actions. If she lives in my house, she will follow my rules, he said loudly as he paced back and forth. She will give that child up for adoption and go back to school and take her medicine. Ricky sighed. Well, I don't think she wants to actually move back in. She just wants you to love her. She wants to be your little girl again. She wants your forgiveness, and she's trying to forgive you. Forgive me? Yeah, Dad, and I wish her luck with that. Ricky looked up to see another beautiful girl come into the room. Unlike Destiny, her hair was dark brown. She was slim and dressed nicely, and she came straight to him and held out her hand. Hi, I'm Charity, Destiny's older sister, and I want to be in touch with my sister. Up until now, my father has insisted that if I help Destiny, then I can't live here anymore, and he won't continue to pay for my college. But sitting on the steps listening to you tell what Alec and Destiny have been willing to give up for each other, then I'm ready to do that too. I'll go homeless if I have to, and stop going to school, and get a job at Mickey D's if I have to, but I want to see my sister. Ricky nodded. I know she'll be extremely happy to see you. And Dad, you need to just stop. Yeah, it's exactly what Mr. Keno said. She messed up your plans for her, and she embarrassed you, and so you're mad at her. Well, I'm mad at you. How dare you not help your youngest child, my sister, when she got into trouble? And how dare you try to keep everyone else from helping her? You told me not to help her or even talk to her. And I'm sure you said the same to Mom and to Aunt Minnie, and Aunt Jess. You do try to control everyone, and you know what? I'm sick and tired of it. So, Dad, you can stop being a fake Christian and actually try to be a real Christian and show love to your little girl. How can you not have feelings for that little baby girl? And yeah, she messed up, and yeah, she's about to have a child. You will have a grandchild. Do you intend to ignore her baby the rest of your life, or are you going to love that child? You're just embarrassed that your daughter got pregnant, and it doesn't fit into your rich social status. Well, what is it Jesus said about rich people? She turned to look at Ricky with a question on her face. You mean Matthew 19:24, where it says, I tell you, it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God? She smiled. Yeah, that's the one. And what's that other one about the kid who ran away and squandered all his money and wanted to come back to his father? The prodigal son, Ricky said with a smile. It's in Luke chapter 15. One of the things we learn from that story is that God's love for us doesn't depend on how good or faithful we are. His love for us is unconditional. He loved us while we were still sinners. And though we mess up and do stupid things, God is still our loving Father. And if we repent and come back to Him, He will accept us back with open arms. Charity nodded. Yeah, that's a good one. Ricky nodded. It is a good one, and well done, Charity. He glanced at Dustin, whose face was pale. It was time to leave the pot cooking for a while. But Charity, don't be too hard on your dad. You know, us parents, we make mistakes too. We can sometimes get caught up in all the amazing plans we make for our family that we forget sometimes that we have to stop and change directions or go an alternate route. And the good thing is, the lesson in the prodigal son can be applied to us parents too. We can ask forgiveness, and our children will hopefully not hold all of our faults against us. Ricky stood. Mr. and Mrs. Copeland, I just want you to know that Destiny is in good hands, and she desperately wants to see you. She and Alec want to make things right. They're going to get married, and they want to do it soon, before they move into the house that they'll occupy for the next year. They'd like to marry in your church, which Pastor Frank has already given permission for. Or if you don't want that, then they'll marry on our front lawn. It would make both of them very happy if you would reach out and maybe even take part in their special day. But don't give me an answer. Think about it. Pray about it. He reached into his suit jacket pocket. Here's her new phone number. He turned and walked toward the front door. Marvinia rushed past him to open the door for him. He turned again and shook Dustin Copeland's hand, then Marvinia's hand, and then smiled at and shook Charity's hand. She suddenly leaned forward and hugged him. He smiled at her. Call her. She'll be so happy to hear from you. I'm going to, right now. Good. He looked at the three of them and smiled. Thanks again for your time, and just in case you'd like to know, it's a boy, and he's due at the end of January. Marvinia gasped, and Charity squealed with delight, and Dustin nodded. Ricky took his leave. And that is the end of chapter 16.